in the late season. Now, can I translate that into into the early season, or will it translate into that November or October when it's a cold day or anything like that? Like, because this is on a southeast facing slope. Beds like on the top edge of that shelter was.
I mean, I personally think so. So big timber, in my case, like we have big hills here. Anytime you get those bigger logging cuts like that, I'm essentially looking at that as a version of a big ag field, food or that covered. And I think that whether it's September or whether it's January, in some shape or form, those deer are going to want to use that cut because it has cover and it has food from a postseason scouting perspective. Try to figure out one, how are the deer using this? So you mentioned you found where these beds are. I think the
Mhm.
bedding is going to stay pretty similar, and that's where I'm going to start to now take that next step and figure out how can I start to craft some setups around this logging cut, which I know is a focal point for deer, and kind of plug
Mhm.
and play for different times of the season. It's not necessarily about, I feel like, finding the bed. I'm just trying to walk around it and find setups for different times of the year.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Hunt the Season. This one I sat down with Greg Kazmierski. We talk a lot about buck bedding in this episode, mostly because I've recently found a few really good buck beds in a newer area that I'm going to be hunting this year. I'm actually currently out here right now trying to break it down just a little bit more, trying to figure out where they're going to or where they're coming from for those buck beds. Been finding a lot of sign right now in this area, a lot of feeding sign, put it that way. Some big scrapes that I found. That one really massive scrape that will be a pretty much a easy, low impact type of camera check. This one here that I just hung actually back here is over another scrape that's behind that scrape, and it's also a big scrape, but there's lots of feeding sign right here around it right here that I'm actually looking at. But I'm just slowly going through here, seeing if I find any sheds or anything like that, because I know there's a few big deer in this area, but it's just a matter of finding them. It's pretty bright out right now, so I'm not too confident in finding a shed, but just going over the newer stuff that I see and trying to maybe find another patch of bedding that they're bedding in. There's lots of little rubs here, so it's most likely it might be a little buck and some doe making these. All this feeding sign right in here, so I'm not too hopeful. Looks like they're feeding on some oaks, um, some shrubs as well, some greenery, but found a little bit of human sign, not too terribly much. Usually in this area you see a lot of tree stands still hung up, and a lot of that stuff you find. But the scrapes I found are good. Hung them over that, hung them up high in the tree, so people can't get them. The one that's easy access, I can literally ride and bike in with my daughter for a bike ride and take her. But in this one, you're going to hear a lot about buck bedding and bedding in general. So it's a really great conversation, very informative, and a great conversation with Greg as always. Really hope you guys enjoy this episode. Hope you guys are going to start enjoying this nicer weather. It's like be 50, 70 this weekend, so be kind of nice. Gonna get out and enjoy it. Got a Cinderella breakfast with my daughter on Saturday, so that's gonna be pretty fun. But got some good episodes here coming out for you guys, and still recording, still enjoying it, and enjoying the beautiful weather. So thanks for listening, guys. Remember to like, subscribe, check out the partners, affiliates in the description. Once again, really appreciate you guys listening to the episodes. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube as well. Some video content's coming out on there. Thanks, guys. See ya.
My original thought was this was going to be part of the series, but I'm thinking I'm just gonna, if you're okay with it, have you
Hmm.
back on at a later date too to do
Yeah,
that
for sure.
series, because I think
Yeah.
this would be good to talk about one, parenthood, postseason
Hmm.
scouting,
Yeah.
how your season went. I think that's kind of what I focus on because, like, one, I'm getting back in the groove of this thing. Like,
Yeah.
I took off like I don't even know the last time I recorded, to be honest with you. So I
Got it.
want to.
Yeah, no worries, man. Yeah, I'm more than happy to come on anytime. I enjoy the conversations we have, so it doesn't
Yeah,
matter to me, whatever direction you want to go.
cool, man. I think that's where I kind of want to go because for me personally, well, let's introduce you first,
Hmm.
all right, for the new listeners. A little bit about your business first, and then what you do, like how you cut your what you cut your teeth on too for hunting wise.
Yeah. So I'm Greg Kazmierski, live down in Southern Ohio, and I do a couple of different things, wear a couple different hats. I help landowners design and develop their hunting properties, mainly work in Ohio, but I work in the surrounding states as well. And then I'm a real estate agent here in Ohio and focus on recreational land, mainly hunting properties, but some bigger tracts of land as well. And those are the two th main things that I do business wise. I post a lot of content online. I really enjoy helping people out that way, just any kind of tips and tricks that I can give them on there. And then outside of that, just really like my hunting journey, it all started. I grew up in Michigan and had a very traditional upbringing in the sense that we have like the deer camp type of vibe up there, and it was my dad, other family members, his friends, and that's kind of how I got into hunting was just being around that and the camaraderie of a really cool up north deer camp. And then that was my early days. And then I got into bow hunting once I was a teenager, and then just really dove in head over heels. Once I turned 16 and had my bow, I just started cruising around and hunting everywhere. And within a couple of years of figuring out that I could travel to hunt, and once I started making a little bit of money, I started traveling down to Ohio and really just fell in love with the quality of deer hunting in Ohio, which is really what kind of led me on this journey to where I am today professionally, and then also just where I live. I really fell in love with this part of the state and knew I wanted to do something here. And the fact that I get to live here now, it's just funny how life works out. But yeah, that's a snapshot of how I made it to where I'm at today.
Yeah, it's if this is the first time you listen to Greg on this podcast, we have a few. I think it was like 4 episodes with you or more even. But
Hmm.
yeah, like your wealth of knowledge, love your content you put out. I try and watch every single one. I haven't gotten into watching like I try and watch like the property ones, but yet since I don't have property, it's like I don't find myself as interested in that stuff. It's like I watch it just in case I do get property down the
Yeah.
line, right?
Yep.
But it's like when you break down the public pieces and like scouting and buck bedding and how they move and all that kind of stuff, like you put together really well put together videos. Put
Yeah,
that
I
on
appreciate that.
YouTube. Yeah, I love them. It's a wealth of knowledge. It's helped me quite a bit actually. But there's a few things I want to talk about with that,
Hmm.
especially because we're talking about postseason scouting too. But being from Michigan, I know there's a big thing going on right now with Michigan, and they're trying to do like the earn a buck or a $1 state now. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I definitely support that. I'm not nearly as in tune with the dynamics of Michigan as I used to be when I was growing up hunting there, just because the extent of me hunting in Michigan now is a few days a year. I go up to deer camp with my dad, and then I might go on a doe hunt with a friend at the end of the season, something like that around the holidays. But I'm a big fan of it because when I grew up hunting, and this was kind of a part of my whole journey, I grew up hunting in Michigan on a lot of public land, and I got to experience a lot of really cool hunts, but I didn't realize what mature deer were. I didn't realize what it meant to see a 150-inch buck,
Right.
because those things just didn't really happen where I grew up in Michigan. And then once I started to realize that the reason why the hunting it is like it is in Michigan is because the way the whole system is set up. And then when I started traveling to Ohio and I started hunting the same kind of public land and just showing up and hunting, and then it's like, oh my gosh, this hunting is so much better. And I just had to drive 5 hours south. And then you start to stack things up and realize Ohio only has the $1 stake. They do all of these different management practices. So, you got a guy like me that just uprooted his whole life and moved down here. For one of the big reasons was because of the way that they manage their deer herd here in Ohio. And when it's something I'm passionate about, I made the move. So, I mean, I, I've always felt that. the way that Michigan's habitat is laid out in the whole, like there's no reason why they don't have trophy whitetails like you do in Ohio and Wisconsin and Indiana. And you look at all of those states and they don't set up their management structure the way the state of Michigan does. It's different in some shape or form. I know like Wisconsin, you can still get a couple bucks there, but it's split up throughout the year and everything, and it seems like a change is needed. Will it ever happen? I don't know. I mean, I definitely credit those guys that are fighting the good fight, trying to make it happen. I believe that their passion will see through, but it's just hard to say with the way that everything seems to be ran in Michigan.
Yeah, it's I mean PA was like that. I think it was like 2002, I want to say, that the antler restrictions went into place. Like we were never a multiple buck state. So the antler restriction went in place, and then a couple of years down the road, you see bigger buck being harvested, bigger bucks on trail
Yep.
cameras. You see all this stuff. Like, was it the antler restriction, or was it like cameras becoming a more popular thing and people seeing bigger buck that growing or going deeper in the woods or whatever? Like, but the antler restrictions has a big like
Definitely.
it
Yeah,
has a
I
big
know. Yeah, I know that there's like this, I can't remember exactly, but I believe it's like the northwest 12 counties in the lower
Mhm.
peninsula of Michigan and something like that that have had the APRs in place. And I know that just when I used to live up there, my friends and I, we would do like a traveling bow camp every year, and we went up to that area the one time and just same thing, just really a lot different quality of bucks because they have those APRs in place compared to where I grew up, where it just brown it's down. If you see a year and a half old buck, I'm going to go out there and shoot it because I have another buck tag in my pocket. So why not just get this one out of the way and then I can wait for the big one? I feel like that was the most common line I heard in the area I was
Mhm.
growing up was I'll get my tag filled and then I'll wait for the big one. And then it just there's so many thought processes that change if you switch to either earn a buck or 1 buck state, whatever it may be. There's such better solutions out there for a better deer herd overall.
I definitely think the earn a buck thing is an important thing because I think, excuse me, there's a lot of there's a lot of draw to obviously shooting big buck and buck in general, right? But like when you have to shoot a doe to get a buck, it makes the herd more level, right?
Yeah.
Because like you're
Yep.
like, okay, you got to take one to get the other, vice versa. Like if you get a
Yep.
buck, then you should be able to shoot a doe also.
Yep.
I think that's an important thing, and I think that's kind of being missed altogether in like the hunting industry. It's being pushed so much of like, okay, we got to shoot buck. Like big buck is what
Hmm.
makes
Yep.
the industry go around. I get that, but doe are just as important as big
Definitely.
buck.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's just as fun to hunt. Like I just love to go out there for the hunt. It doesn't really matter to me at the end of the day what I harvest. It's just the whole goal is to harvest something. And I love harvesting does just as much as I do bucks. For me, it's just because I would rather enjoy the experience of the hunt and then know exactly where the food I'm feeding my family is coming from. That's what it's about for me. And I look at the area I grew up. I still go back there for the holidays and everything, and we have a late firearm season, antlerless season. And I mean, man, it's crazy. You can drive around the fields in that area, and I'm not over exaggerating, but you can literally go on these mile blocks, and every farm field has like 80 deer in it. And it's just, that such a large portion of those are does. And if you can't look at that and think that things need to be balanced out a little bit, then it's crazy to me that people just don't realize
Yeah.
what is going on.
Yeah. I mean, I drive. This is the first year that I realized I drive down the road from my house about maybe like 5 minutes at most. And I look to my left during this tough winter right now, and I see like there was like 30 plus deer out in this field. I'm like, and I know they rifle hunt down there, but I
Hmm.
just don't know how I didn't see them out this year. So it's like that's with that low pressure at that on that property. It's like I wonder how many deer actually go there and try and eat off that. And that's
Yeah,
not healthy for those deer to have 50 deer. And I think it's I'm looking at OnX right now. It might be an an 80-acre property to have
right.
30 deer just eating in the same area right there. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't think that's necessarily healthy. And like you said, I guarantee you it's probably mostly doe.
yeah,
It's like maybe 80 or 90-10
yep.
ratio there. Like I big buck don't like to be around all those doe.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know that's the case where I grew up. Like, because my dad, he'll call me all the time and let me know. He'll just drive around, see some deer, call me, and that's always like his report is the buck to doe ratio, and he's always in a fit about it because it bothers him too, and he can drive around and see 20 deer in a field, and you might see one or two bucks, and that's just the reality. That's the ratio so out of whack.
Yeah. Yes, it needs to be more balanced out. I mean, I know people don't really want to hear it, but it's like if you take a year off from not shooting a buck, put it that way, and just shoot three doe or two
Yep.
doe, like think how much more balanced that herd would possibly be for, like, for instance, when you do property management and you help people like design their property, it's like, okay, maybe you should try and take this many doe off your
Hmm.
property to
Yeah.
balance out the herd.
Yep, and it's difficult, when you get into the property management side of things of like what is actually the right number because it's so dynamic based on the area and how much acreage you own and what are your neighbors doing and there's so many different elements that come into play, but there's still just responsible strategy that you can do and
Mhm.
honestly that's one of the more challenging things about especially the Ohio properties I work on is the fact that a lot of these guys are non-residents. They don't live
Mm.
here. So really, they bought hunting property in Ohio to try to harvest mature Ohio whitetail, which
Mhm.
no problem, that's great. But we still need to make sure we harvest some does as a collective because if you have enough landowners like that aren't harvesting the does and they're just coming down here getting their buck and then going back home, that in itself is going to throw things a little bit out of balance. But I think that the nice thing is that we do a pretty good job on the resident level of keeping things in balance. And even some of those non-resident landowners that I work with, they're very intentional about making sure that they harvest does on their property because they understand that if they want to continuously have opportunities at these older bucks, they need to have that balance in the herd.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a very important part, especially when you have private property. I mean, I like you said, I love shooting doe because guess what? It tastes pretty much the same, if not even better.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Sometimes, depending on the age of the buck, it probably tastes a little better.
For sure. Yep, I couldn't agree more.
So this season, how did that
Mhm.
go for you hunting wise? Because being a new dad, we
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
the last episode we had, we talked about it a little bit, and we were going to follow up with it.
Yep.
So how did that go with being a new dad, hunting and doing your business, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff?
Man, it was a lot. Really, really more moving parts than I ever really could have imagined. I still got to do a couple hunting trips. I started out by going out to Wisconsin, did a public land hunting trip with a couple of buddies. Weather was just brutal, and that didn't help. That was my first time hunting away from family, and the fact that it was like 90 degrees, the deer weren't moving that much. I ended up packing up, coming home early because I'm like, I'm not gonna sit here and get bitten by mosquitoes when my little girl's at home. Like I'm getting out of here. So I left early. I packed it in, came back home, and the rest of the season, I mean, I went up to Michigan. I ended up hunting 3 days in Michigan, filled two tags. That was super cool. Really good ratio up there. I got a buck and a doe. I got a buck up at deer camp in the Upper Peninsula. And then on a late season doe hunt, I went out with one of my buddies and I was able to harvest a doe. So that was super efficient time spent in the woods up in Michigan. And then I went on just a season long chase down here in Ohio. I was on some really good bucks on both public land and on my property. This was the first full season on my property, and I was really happy with the way that things shaped out. I had a handful of good bucks that were kind of in and out throughout the year, a couple just really, really good whitetail, and I knew that I still, my property is a work in progress. This was the first year doing improvements. I know that I need to make that timber stand better on my property overall to have more consistent opportunities, but I identified the best area of my property, and I knew that I didn't really want to apply pressure to it until the end of October because, I mean, big timber hill country, anytime you get a good funnel and you know you have does around, you're going to have bucks cruising through there. And so I left that area of my property alone, went in there, and I had really good hunts from Halloween till November 5th. In that window, I had three really good encounters with older bucks, and I actually did release an arrow on one, and unfortunately he ducked the string on me, and when he did that I went right through his back strap.
Mm.
he ended up coming back, and I hunted him the rest of the year. He was just a real solid, heavy framed 8 point, and he ducked the string that day, and then throughout the rest of the season, I never got another sight of him from the tree, but he was always around. It was just kind of like this constant back and forth, and hunted him right up until the very end. He was still coming into the food plot very consistently, and it was kind of like one of those things where he was coming in right after light, and then all of a sudden he would just show up randomly in the daytime, and I was just poking around trying to hunt him because with my property not having the cover, I knew that it was pretty much going to be if he caught on to what me being out there, then he was going to split. So I might have played it a little too conservative later on, now that I look back and at the end of the season. But I mean, overall, just the amount of older bucks that I encountered in the woods on my property, and then some close calls on the public land on some good deer, and also just passed a handful of bucks that I typically wouldn't pass, but knowing that I had some really good deer on my own property, I did pass a couple really good bucks on public land, which I still look back on, and I'm not upset at all because I have meat in the freezer. I had an opportunity, I look at that event that I had when I hit that buck on my property as not, I try to just frame it differently. I don't want to look at it as a failure. I set that spot up. I let it be because I knew that I needed to just save that for the best days of the year. I went out there and he came in and did exactly what I wanted him to do. And everything worked out except the shot. So if I can just kind of frame that as, hey, you're still doing the right things on the property. You had all these encounters with the bucks. You even flung an arrow. You just didn't fill your tag. That's the only thing that didn't work out. But everything else still went according to plan. So I still look at it as it was a successful season. I'm very happy with it. Just would have been definitely would have been cool if I would have got that buck because it would have been the biggest buck I've ever gotten. So it is a little bummer, but still overall I'm happy with the season.
I think that right there, what you just said, to look back, I think we talked about it before, but like to be able to look back and like, yeah, you didn't fill a tag in your home state, or like not necessarily home state, but the state you live in right now. You had encounters with those mature buck, right? Like to look back and be
Yep.
like, okay, it was still a success. Like in the moment, you're like, this really sucks, right? But
Yeah.
then you look back and it's like, okay, wait a second. I had all those encounters with mature buck. I just didn't fill the tag, but yet
Yep.
I'm growing from those experiences. And I think that's important for, I mean, in life in general, and
Hmm.
hunting in general. I think that's very important to do that stuff because it's growth, and we
Yeah.
need that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. I mean, because at the end of the day, like I could have filled my tag if I wanted to. Granted, I needed to make the shot and execute, which I didn't the one time in Ohio that I had the chance, but still, like I had plenty of opportunities to harvest a buck in Ohio.
Mhm.
I just made the choice not to. So I've always looked at it as an opportunity thing and not filling my tag of if I'm putting myself and getting older bucks in bow range, if I can do that on a consistent basis, if I could look back at Greg in 2018 and say, hey, this is the way your season went, that guy would be like, whoa, man, we're kind of figuring this thing out. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool. You're doing a good job. Like I wouldn't have dreamed of having a season like this when I was
Hmm.
a teenager, and it's super cool to see the growth of how things have progressed in my hunting journey, especially bow hunting, because I didn't, that was the thing about growing up. My family wasn't super into bow hunting. They would go out here and there, but primarily a gun camp deer family. That's really what we were all about. So a lot of the things that I've learned in bow hunting has been self-taught or just reaching out to mentors outside of my family and then just learning that way. So obviously it's going to take a longer time because anytime you're trying to figure something out on your own, you're kind of going
Hmm.
through all the trials and tribulations. And I just feel that over the last decade of bow hunting, I mean, it's taught me so much, and the progression has been pretty incredible when I sit back and actually reflect on it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. So like I've been primarily just rifle hunter for my whole life until the age of 20, 21. Then I got into
Hmm.
like archery with a crossbow. And now
Yep.
it's like I'm these last since starting the podcast is when like I really became like a quote unquote mobile hunter
Yeah.
and it's through art like a bow hunter and got my first mobile setup and all like now I feel my mobile set is complete. I got a point five, I got sticks, I got all this kind of stuff and it all fits together. But like and knowing how to use a mobile setup correctly, right? Like to
Yep.
go in and hunt correctly and, you know, play the wind and thermals and know where to scout and all that kind of stuff. Like it's like the last 5 years, I feel like is when I truly became what I am now. It's like I'm still going through that process of learning and failing
Yeah.
and doing all this kind of stuff and growing from my failures. It's like I haven't been able to connect on a buck yet, right? Like
Yeah.
I've let some arrows go, wounded some buck,
Hmm.
which I hate doing.
Yep.
This past year had that happen again with a
Hmm.
really solid 8 point in the big woods of
Yep.
Pennsylvania. Got to sneak up a stalk up to a buck, bedded buck at 20 yards. Could have released an arrow there, didn't do it, and then had a encounter with a really big. I think it was another 8 point at 60 yards in the mountains. So it's like you have those encounters and you learn from that. It's like okay, yeah, it sucks that I wounded that buck. It sucks that I did that, but there's growth to be had from that. And I think that's, you know,
100%.
if anyone gets anything from this podcast, that's one thing that you need to do is like just focus on that growth. Like that's
Yeah.
a huge thing. Like Greg and I are just talking about right now. It's like it's growth, man. Like
Yeah.
that's if you keep growing every year, eventually it's all going to come together.
100%.
Eventually,
Yeah. Yeah, if there's one common thing that I did learn from any bow hunting mentor I had as I continued to progress on that journey, and by no means am I saying that I'm there. I don't think I'm ever going to be there because I think that's when I'm going to stop loving bow hunting, and I just don't foresee that happening. But the most common thing that I heard growing up was just that once it clicks and you actually harvest that kind of ideal buck that you're going after,
mhm.
then it's going to make so much more sense. And I've experienced that. Once you actually harvest that whitetail and you set this big goal and you make it happen, and then you kind of take a moment after the fact to really just reverse how all of that went down, then it's just going to be like, oh, wait a minute. I can just craft my setup around that whole idea every time out in the woods and understand that it's going to take some reps to do this thing again, but it's really the same process over and over. These deer are, I think at times we do give them a lot more credit than they deserve. They are very intelligent animals and they're very instinctive, but at the end of the day, they still have these core instincts that drive everything that they do. And I think like that whole it clicks mindset is you just understand the instincts of the deer, and that's what I try to share in a lot of my content is the deer instincts and the habits of these deer, because if you can learn those things, it doesn't matter what tactic you're going to use. There's thousands of different ways to harvest a whitetail, but if you understand the behavior at its core in the area that you hunt, that's when you can now apply a tactic to go out there and have success.
Yeah, you're 100% right. We give them a lot of credit. Like yes, they are very smart. They're very smart creatures, but I think us as humans, as hunters, and because of all these, you know, the podcast, YouTube channels, and all that kind of stuff, we overthink a lot of things. It's like,
Definitely.
why would this make sense? Like, why would like we go into a spot, we scout it, right? We find all this signs like this is too easy. He's doing something different, right? It's like
Yeah,
no,
right.
sometimes he's just doing
He's
the
doing that
normal
thing.
thing. He's doing
Yep.
what the sign says. So
Yeah.
it's like I think that's kind of like what I was trying to do this year, or this postseason, I should say. But before we get the postseason scouting, I want to hear about the Michigan buck and the
Yeah.
Michigan doe. Like it was in the same area.
Correct. Yeah, it was two completely different areas. One was in the Upper Peninsula, the other one was down in the Lower Peninsula. Upper Peninsula, this was super cool story with this buck. So we we have had this deer camp in our family since I can't remember what year my dad and grandpa bought it. It was like the late 90s. I think it was like 97, 98 is when they bought this deer camp. So it's been around for a couple decades at this point. And we have these spots, right, that we have names for and things like that. I think that's pretty
Love those
traditional in
spots. Love
in
those.
gun camps. Yeah. So these spots that we have and hunt, and a lot of times when I'm up there, I like to just walk around. We're right in the middle of a national forest, so you can just walk all day, follow tracks around, and it's a really fun and just a different pace of hunting. But every now and again, I'll hunt these spots that we have set up. And there's this one trailhead that my dad hunted when they first got started. It's a really long walk off the parking lot, so as he's gotten older, he stopped hunting that area, and I've kind of taken that spot over, per se. And there's this great big white pine tree that he always hunted out of. And that was the same tree that I harvested this buck out of. So that was super cool. That was the first time I've had an experience like that where I was able to have a successful hunt out of the same, literally the same exact tree that my dad has harvested a lot of whitetails out of, growing up and everything. So that was really cool moment to finally be able to kind of like etch that story up at our deer camp. And it was, I mean, nothing special about the rack on the buck, but it was still just it was a really cool experience to get to do that. And very efficient. It was the second morning that I was up there, and I didn't have a lot of time to spend up there this year, so I was not going to be very picky on what buck was coming out. My main thing was wanting to go up there and harvest a deer. So I was able to do that, and that was just a awesome hunt, awesome time. Anytime I get to go to deer camp, it's a really cool experience because it's just the one time of the year that I feel like I'm not so focused on strategy. I'm just focused on enjoying the time, especially with my dad, and then just
Mhm.
and being able to kind of hang out and just relax and go out there and know that I'm not there's a very, very minuscule chance of me seeing a 150-inch buck down up here, but I'm gonna enjoy it just as much. And
Yeah.
then the doe hunt, that was in the area I grew up in mid-Michigan, and went out with a buddy around the holidays for that firearm season. And he lives close to that piece of state land, and so he's pretty in tune with the way that the deer are kind of in and out of that area. And there's a great big logging cut that he has spent a lot of time bow hunting around. And I mean, we went out there and we got out there in the early afternoon and started walking through this logging cut, and the woody browse was just destroyed. So we with having a firearm, having a rifle, I mean, it's like I don't need to be very efficient here. We just kind of backed up on the downwind side of the logging cut, split up a couple hundred yards, and then I just went around some of that fresh feed sign, and group of does came out, and just that was really it just worked out almost. And it was like one of those hunts like, why don't I just do this every time? That was pretty easy, like find the feed sign, set up in a tree downwind, let them come out and fill your tag. It's like, no kidding, dude. It's really that simple sometimes.
Yes, yes. Sometimes it is that simple. Like we stay, like I just said before, like we give them way too much credit. Like it's like
Yeah.
don't need to get fancy. Just find that feed and sit up
Yep.
there.
Yep. So
But
yeah, so those were a couple good hunts. Couple it was a short season up in Michigan, but
Mhm.
filling a couple tags like that with the stories behind it, one with family, one with a really good buddy of mine. It was just it's always fun. I always enjoy, even if it's limited every year, I enjoy my time getting to go up and hunt Michigan.
100%, dude. I love deer camp. Like you said, it slows down,
Yeah.
especially rifle deer camp. It slows
Yeah.
down. Like I, w- you want it to slow down, but like life
Yes.
goes so fast, right?
Right.
So like you get in the woods and it's like what 6 a.m. Sometimes you
Yeah.
get to your saying you're set up 6 a.m. Then all of a sudden like it's 5 o'clock when you blink. It's like
Yep.
especially like the first week, dude. Like it goes so fast of rifles. Like
Mhm.
hunting season this year, I'm sure you felt it being in like when you weren't a dad, when I wasn't a dad, it seemed like it took a while for the season to
Yeah.
go by. And then like all of a sudden you become a dad, and it's like bam.
Yeah. Holy smokes. Yeah.
It's like
Here and
you go
gone.
on the first day, it's like, oh, I have plenty of time. I'm okay. Then
Yeah.
it's like your days are numbered here and there to go out. And then all of a sudden it's like it's late season now. It's
Yeah.
January. It's like
What happened?
where
Yep.
did time go?
For sure.
The I the the white pine that you sat in,
Yeah.
how long did it take? Because I saw the one post you had about the deer stand, like the
Yep.
built deer stands. I
Hmm.
don't think there wasn't a built deer stand there, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So how long did it take your dad to find that spot? Did you ever talk to him about how long it took him to find that spot? Because you said he got a lot of deer out of that.
Yeah. So actually, my dad, when they first got that camp, this was back in the day of paper
Mhm.
topo maps, mind you. My dad and his cousin, which was who has now passed along, but those two were very tight, like tight as could be. and his cousin, he had experience in the military. He was a Marine, so he was really good at map reading, very smart guy.
Hmm.
And also, they both love deer hunting. So they were and that's really where a lot of the knowledge I have on map reading came from. When I was really young, they taught me how to read these topo maps and understand the features that the deer like to use, and just how to look at inconsistencies in the landscape and assume that there's going to be deer activity there.
Hmm.
So where this big white pine is, it's this massive ridge system that comes out of like this 1,000-acre swamp. And it's very narrow. It's only like probably 75 to 100 yards wide, and it's almost a mile long. So all they did, they found that on the map, this ridge system, and they walked down it and then ended up just I feel like the white pines, when they kind of stand out in the forest, it's an easy tree to be like, that'd be a great tree for a tree stand. Like I'm gonna hunt out of that thing. It's got a lot of cover. I can get way up in the air, and it overlooks this whole ridge system. So
Hmm.
there's this slight little draw that pulls the deer out very consistently out of the swamp. So it was actually one of the first full hunting seasons. I think they bought the camp because they took a trailer up there before, and they would just kind of bounce around and hunt. And then this big long story about how they found the hunting camp kind of solidified them in that area, and then they hunted that fall, and then the next spring, when my dad and cousin, they had all of these spots picked out on their map and knew they wanted to scout them, and that's how we found literally the same spots that we still hunt today. But that first spring scout is when I'm pretty sure they found this area, and this was just one of those locations where it's such consistent deer movement because it's from that big swamp to the big timber, and this is the main drag of how those deer are getting in and out of those two habitat types. So once that tree was found, it's like this is an area that's going to produce, and it's been a consistent producer for decades.
That's that's awesome to find those, and the pine tree statement, 100%. Because like the buck I shot at this year and wounded him,
Hmm.
it was perfect back cover. There was a tree in front of it. I First of all, let's walk through this here. So I expect him to come down the mountain in front of me because
Hmm.
there's a heavy trail with scrapes coming down. Of
Yep.
course, he comes behind me.
Mm.
Like it was probably the coolest moment ever because like I thought I heard a grunt and then it went away. Right, like I was like, maybe that wasn't a grunt, and then all of a sudden I hear a squirrel chatter and then a grunt, and I'm like, okay, that was definitely a grunt right there.
Yeah.
So I have no idea where it's coming because I have pines behind me. Like I can't
Yep.
see behind me because I didn't think they would come from behind me. Obviously, with the thermals dropping,
Hmm.
it made sense if they would come behind me, right?
Yeah.
Looking back at it now, it's like all these thermals dropping. Why would he not come behind me? Why would it
Right.
come from the top down?
Hmm.
So he comes behind me in the pines, and I'm like, oh crap! But my tree was perfect. So like if they came down the mountain, they wouldn't have seen me. Like you said, like all that cover right there in the
Hmm.
pines, they wouldn't see you. So
Yeah.
like that right there, that's a growing moment right there
Yep.
from that experience. But yeah, he comes back. It didn't give me a clean enough shot. Put it that way. And
Hmm.
he turns as I release the arrow, hit him right in the ass, and then he
Hmm.
goes 3 miles, follow him, all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
like, the pines are I love hunting near pines. Put it that
Yeah.
way. It's
For
just
sure.
it's phenomenal.
Yep. Yeah, that's like this is just a massive white pine tree. So
Yep.
you can get up there, and I put a platform up there when I
Hmm.
hunt each season. I just carry like it's a home built custom platform because with it being on the national forest ground, like you can't attach anything to the tree. You gotta take it down at the end of season, everything like that. So I'll take out this platform that's basically just like a standing platform, and then just either bring a chair or whatever it is to kind of get settled in that tree. But the base of this pine is so big that you don't have any silhouette. It's that
Hmm.
big that you can be completely unexposed. And I've never ever got seen by a deer out of that tree. I've hunted that tree a lot of times, and not one time has a deer ever looked up at me and busted me because they don't know you're there.
Yeah. It's funny you say about the platform because like every tree, almost I would say 80% of the tree stands that you find that are like permanent ones that are like have been there for years and years and
Hmm.
years. The ones I always find are in those pine trees. Like
Yep.
I found it multiple times this past
Yeah.
year where it's like you look at a pine tree, it's like, oh, there's an old stand right there.
Yeah.
It's like falling
Yep.
apart. And there was one, it was the last day of rifle season here in Pennsylvania. And I was walking this little valley system where Ethan took a 200 plus yard shot at a doe, completely missed. Like it was
Yeah.
with a 30-30, it did not hit.
Yeah.
Um, the doe kind of just like looked around and was like, "Oh, we should probably run now."
Yeah, we gotta get out of here.
But so like we go back there for the evening hunt. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to set up on this side. You set up on the other side. I'm walking down, and it's like a blizzard now. But I look
Mhm.
up in this pine tree, and I can see like a platform there. I'm like, oh man, if that's actually a solid tree stand still, I'm going to sit in that one for the evening hunt. I
Mhm.
get up there, it's like a fallen apart tree stand. It's like
Yeah.
grown in. It has little screw-in steps to it. I'm like,
Oh,
yeah, I don't trust those at all.
yeah.
But yeah, like that was, and then there's a wooden one that we found. Like it's like at the very, very top of this pine tree. And I'm like,
Hmm.
how in the world did someone get up there to
Crazy.
hunt? It's like
Yeah.
I feel like they probably climbed the branches up to the top because there's nothing like screwed in the
Yeah.
tree. No sign of that. It's cool to find those old stands
Yeah. I love it.
because like your post, like how long did it take that person to
Hmm.
find that spot? Or like was it just like you don't just take wood out there and just put it in a random tree.
Yeah,
Like you want to
exactly.
make sure
You're
it's
very intentional about what you're doing. It's
yeah.
always cool. It's one of my favorite things to come across in the woods. It's just and I always think one of the things I always think is just, if you could just have a conversation with hypothetically with that tree stand and just the things that it's seen, just you just get like these snapshots in time when you're out there hunting and you get to just be a part of that environment and it's just the coolest thing ever. And it's just like, man, you know that the stories that that thing could tell about the days in the woods, it would just be an awesome, awesome thing.
If someone's listening to this that writes stories, if you could make a child's book,
Yeah, good
that
idea.
old stand, just call it
Yep,
that old stand,
I
and
like
just like
that.
or like if someone write a novel about that old stand and it's coming from
Yeah,
a grandpa's point of view or great grandpa's point of view, like gosh, that'd pull at the heartstrings right there, I'm
yeah,
sure. Like
yeah. That's a good one. I like that. That's a good idea.
if anyone hears it, you give us credit here
Yeah,
first.
for sure. Yep.
So let's talk a little postseason scouting here. Let's
Yeah.
since we're this will drop around. I think I'd looked at it, it's going to be when I start going back to work again. So I'm off for 6 more weeks.
Nice.
Um, yeah, it'll drop like I think March 30th
Okay.
or something like that. The last day of March is a Monday, um, and it'll drop that day before April Fool's Day.
Hmm.
So let's talk a little postseason scouting, man. So
Yeah.
I guess we'll just stick to. I found an area
Hmm.
uh, that is kind of I never looked at it before. I'm hunting more local to me now, so I'm trying
Hmm.
to find these places that actually will produce deer compared to like just going in and hunting over a scrape or something like that.
Yeah.
So there's an old shelter wood cut. I think it's a 2016 shelter wood cut, very thick, like it's briars, like a lot
Mhm.
of briars. But I went in there. It was it was during late season. When did I go in there? Let me check what I marked here. I went in there January 1st.
Hmm.
So it was like in late season there with a flintlock. Found a big bed on the edge. Like it seems like a lot of these beds on the edge, the top edge of this shelter wood cut in the late season. Now, can I translate that into into the early season, or like can I will it translate into like the that November or October when it's a cold day or anything like that? Like because this is on a southeast facing slope,
Hmm.
but there's beds all on this slope of a south facing slope. So, and I went into it. There's trails going into it. There's beds like on the top edge of that shelter wood. So like there's ones on the like outside of it, and then there's some that are like directly in it,
Hmm.
like on the very edge. So like, is that something I can translate into like okay, these deer, some of them are really big beds, so I'm guessing buck beds.
Yep.
Would it translate into that time of year?
I mean, I personally think so. I look at when we're in the big woods and big timber in my case, like we have big hills here, no agriculture for miles and miles. So you gotta think about how can I actually start to narrow down the movement. And if you can, what the way I'm starting to adapt and look at it more and more is that anytime you get those bigger logging cuts like that, I'm essentially looking at that as a version of a big ag field. In a way, whether it is for that food or that cover, depending on the structure of it, it's going to be a focal point of deer activity. And I think that whether it's September or whether it's January, in some shape or form, those deer are going to want to use that cut because it has cover and it has food. And when you start to zoom out and look at the surrounding area, especially when there's not any of those close by, that is going to be their livelihood because that's where
Yes.
the abundance of resources are going to be for them to continue to survive. Now, how they're going to use that, I think that's definitely going to change from the early season to the late season, depending on food sources. When those bucks are more interested in does, they start leaving that cut and going to other ones. So that's going to look a little bit different, and you kind of just got to plug and play your strategy. But I think from a postseason scouting perspective, because I have a couple areas like you're talking about nailed down on the state land that I hunt as well. Very similar type of thing. Found these big
Mhm.
logging cuts, ran cameras out there all year, got some really good bucks on trail camera. Don't fully
Yeah.
understand these logging cuts, but my whole goal here when I do go out and scout these individual cuts in the off season is to just try to figure out one, how are the deer using this? So you mentioned you found where these beds are. I think the
Mhm.
bedding is going to stay pretty similar. Like in the big woods, the deer tend to be more nomadic with their bedding. They'll go from one area to the next pretty often. But we know that they're going to bed in these certain types of things. Like you started to see them bedding on the edge or just on the inside. So now you can log that as a mental note when you're going out there and you're hunting the early season. You know where your vulnerability is, and you know that if I'm here, they're probably going to be able to see me. My hunt's over before it even gets started. And that's where I'm going to start to now take that next step and figure out how can I start to craft some setups around this logging cut, which I know is a focal point for deer, and kind of plug
Mhm.
and play for different times of the season. So if I have that logging cut and then I drop down to the bottom of the ridge, and it's like, wow, there's this really nice cluster of white oaks here. This is probably going to be a pretty killer spot into September, first week of October, if these white oaks are dropping. So now it's just find a tree stand or find a tree for a tree stand, kind of get a good idea on an area you want to set up. Or, hey, middle of November, bucks are cruising like crazy. There's this little pinch point here that I think if I just plugged away an all day sit, I'm probably going to see some bucks cruising in and out of this logging cut. So it's not necessarily about I feel like finding the bed or anything like that. It's just for me, if I know that logging cut is what I think it's going to be and it's going to continue to hold deer, I'm just trying to walk around it and find setups for different times of the year based off of the things I know, and then I can just continue to learn more and more about that cut.
Okay. And the one thing I found too, like I hung two cameras in there, both on video mode. I'm running all my cameras on video mode now,
I
just
do the
because
same.
it's like
Yeah.
I usually run them on picture mode. Like that was what I always did. And it's just
Yep.
like, ah, man, I feel like I'm missing so much
Yep.
by not running video mode. So I
Yeah.
did that. Hung two, there's two like kind of entryways that looks like they're going in and out. So I hung them on both entryways, and the old logging road too. I hung it on that as well. So like
Mhm.
it's the old logging road's like grown up. So it's like no one's walking through that.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're an idiot like me and get briars.
Yeah.
Greg. You know what I said? My wife laughs at me because it's very true. I was in the middle of this. I was in the middle of the shelter work cut, crawling on my hands and knees, getting through here. My ears bleeding, everything. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I stand up and I'm like, I look around me. I'm like, how the heck am I going to get out of here?
Yeah.
I'm like, but you know what I said? I said, you know what? My wife gave birth to two kids. If I can't get through this effing thorns,
Yep.
then
There you go.
I'm weak.
That's right, man. That's a good way to look at it. I love that.
All of a sudden, I was like, I didn't feel a single thing after that.
Yeah. That's awesome.
My wife was like, "Were you filming yourself when you did this?" I was like, "No, just talking to myself in the middle of the
Yeah.
woods."
That's right.
But so this shelter, when I just looked at it, it's total of about what I say, like 21 acres. So it's not like a huge one.
Hmm.
But it's a 2016 shelter wood cut. The thing that interests me about this, some of it's on a steep slope. There's two tree stands, one on the one side of it, one on the other side of it. I'm guessing it's probably by the same guy,
Yeah.
both climbers. So they're both on like the top part of it on either side. There's water. The only water that's close to it is below the shelterwood cut. My
Hmm.
thought is like, okay, they're going down the shelterwood cut, going through there, getting water, coming back up to the top of the shelterwood, bedding up there. Because on
Hmm.
top part of that shelterwood, it's very steep.
Yep.
So and they all they have to do is with the thermals rising, they would just have to look up, face up that hill and see what's coming down.
Yep.
So how would you go about hunting that or like set up? Because I picked out a few trees above the shelterwood cut, but I'm like, would they see me on the way down? Or like would that be like a midday type thing where get in there before the thermals start dropping, or should I hunt the stream below that, the only water
Yeah.
source?
Yeah. So I think that ultimately I would try to find a handful of different setups, and that kind of like goes back to this whole thought process of trying to set up around a feature like that cut and figure out how can I plug and play different times of the year.
Yep.
But having a pretty good idea on what parts of that cut that they're bedding in, this is where I've always found it to be super valuable to scout with somebody else because even though you know that they're not going to be or potentially not be in that exact bed that you found, you
Hmm.
still know like roughly what kind of features, what area of that they're betting in. And that's where I've always found, like I said, valuable to scout with somebody else, have them wear some type of visible color while they're walking around, and you hang out in that bed and you watch them walk through the woods and just kind of figure out, where are the most exposed areas, and then kind of start to backtrack and ask yourself, how can I use the terrain? Because anytime you're hunting close to bedding, it's a very risky hunt. You're playing with fire at that point because you don't know exactly where they're bedded, and you know they're bedded in a location that's giving them an advantage because survival is their most important thing. So it's very
Hmm.
difficult to get in there and actually get into the right tree in a place that they're not going to see you or hear you or smell you when you're getting in there. So I think ultimately, like, I'm just trying to figure out how can I get on the fringe of where I know that they should be traveling, and then even if that means observing out of a
Hmm.
tree and then catching that main movement pattern, saying, oh, okay, I need to be 30 yards closer in order to actually have a bow hunting opportunity. Then I know that, okay, I probably only have one or two more chances when I go in there to set up on a hunt like this before the gig's kind of up and they know I'm coming in here. So I look at it of it's just like it's a multi-year thing. When you start to get in and narrow down on these areas that you want to focus on when we're talking about hunting on state land, I think that once you find a location where you know deer are hanging out and you can consistently target, it's just about kind of crafting that to your strategy year over year.
Yeah, it's this area I've hunted it. I mean, since I'm coming back local now to me, it's been a while since I've hunted this area, but it's like I feel like going from the big woods, putting a lot of time in there and scouting that, doing all that kind of stuff, growing from that, bringing it back to like the smaller hills, ag country, that kind of stuff. It's like
Hmm.
you look at things a little differently, a very
Yep.
like differently. You look, it's more clear. It's like,
Yep.
okay, this is where it's going to be. But like from what I found before, there's some good scrapes, and it seems like they go from these shelterwood to shelterwood cuts. Like there's shelterwood,
Yep.
multiple shelterwood cuts, but there's an area between each shelterwood cut, and I think that's how they travel. Um, but there's some white oaks too. Like it's just a matter of, like you said, like finding out how they're using it. Or I think
Yeah.
they're, like you said, I think they're using the shelterwood cut when the pressure's on, like during rifle season. I think they're going to be in there
Yep.
because it's hard access, hard to get through. They're hard to push through. In the early season, I think they'll use it just as bedding area and then go to the closest white oak from
Yep.
there when they know the pressure's not on. I think there's just a lot I have to figure out yet. Like, yeah, I found those beds, but like you said, I'm not hunting a particular bed because that bed's not going to be
Hmm.
used every single time.
Yep.
Uh, but there's key characteristics that I did find. It looks like there's this big bed. There was two big boulders, one on like a pure south facing slope up the hill, and there was a big boulder in the cut, and both boulders had a big bed in front of it. So it's like I think
Mhm.
that could possibly be the same type of deer or same buck using
Yep, for
both
sure.
because he feels safe with that. So
Hmm.
like he has his back to that boulder and he just gets the heat off the boulder, it kind of
Hmm.
bounces off there, and he doesn't have to worry about anything behind him because he's bedded with his back to it.
Yep.
So those are key characteristics that I found that I
Yeah.
kind of want to focus on.
Yeah.
Because I mean, one's in the open, one's not it's in the shelter cut. So
Hmm.
that goes to show like you got to like those little minute details, rubs coming out or up to those
Hmm.
beds. Like that's what I found because that's why I'm like, okay, maybe he's using that water and then coming back to bed. That's
Yep.
what I think because like he has big rubs coming up through the shelter or cut coming from the water. So it's like, okay, he's going down there at some point to get water and then he's coming out to his bed.
Yeah.
That's what I think anyway.
Yeah, that's definitely a really good way to look at it. And I think another thing that you pointed out that I would be keying into is just the travel between those cuts. That's something that I really like to target. I mean, the area that I hunt, it's very rugged, and there's really the more and more time I spend out there, there's only so many areas of these big timber sections that these deer are actually using consistently. And anytime you can start piecing together logging cuts like that, and you find the way the terrain flows and any kind of a travel hub in between them, it's a good place to get started if you're really trying to learn an area. And even if it just means kind of standing there and looking at your map and knowing that, okay, I got a logging cut in that direction, I got a logging cut in that direction, and then just start walking and figure out, eventually it gets back to the whole once it clicks mindset. I mean, I can do those types of activities scouting now and just naturally follow the landscape based off of knowing how the deer use the area. And eventually, if I walk around long enough, I'm going to stumble across a spot that I'm going to be like, wait a minute, this is a pretty good bow hunting setup in here. This pinches down the movement. There's the feed tree. I'm right in between where I know I need to be, and it's at least a place to get started. When we talk about I'm a big, how can I make the odds the highest that I possibly can? Those are the ways that you're going to be able to do so. You're putting yourself in a better scenario, and then you just plug and play depending on what time of the year. If you're just looking for a rut funnel, if you're looking for a feed tree, whatever it may be, you just start to narrow down your focus and find those fine spots, and that's just how eventually you're going to come up with some really good stand locations.
Yeah, multiple converging features. Like it doesn't have to just be terrain features. I think that could be like beds, food,
Yep,
water, all that kind of scrapes, like all that kind of
for
stuff.
sure.
Because I found myself focusing too much on scrapes. It's like just hunting the scrape, but it's like, why is that scrape so good? Right? Like
Hmm.
you gotta
Yeah.
find I gotta connect those pieces. Like I know there's scrapes down below.
Yeah.
I just haven't gone down there. And it's like, okay, if they're bedding up here and there's scrapes down there, how are they traveling to this scrape?
Yeah.
Or are they
Hmm.
just scent checking this scrape from up top because with
Yep.
the rising thermals? There's just a lot with postseason scouting, and the only way you can really do that is by getting out there and exploring and just
Yeah.
put boots on the ground. Like we can, I mean, I've done multiple episodes with people talking, be like, what should you look for? What, you know, there's tips you can look at, but like it's looking at a map, it's like, okay, let's check this out first and then go expand from there.
Yeah.
Big thing.
Yep. No, I think that's great. I think another thing too, you've mentioned it a couple of times now, is you ask yourself why things are happening a lot. And I think that when you're scouting, that's got to be the most valuable thing that you can do. You get into those areas where all of a sudden you see a lot of deer sign or you see all these beds. If you just stand there and ask yourself why that's happening, the idea of what's going on in the woods is going to make so much more sense to you. And there's no way to know for sure looking at it from the outside in what's going on until you actually put boots on the ground. But once you start to see that, and whether it's scouting or in the tree during the season, and you see a deer and you ask yourself why, like I've always found that just breaking it down and wondering why something is happening is arguably the most important thing that I've ever done in my hunting journey, because the more times I feel like I ask myself that, the more and more I figure out.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like when I started asking myself why, it's like that's why filming helps so much. I think
Yeah.
like
Hmm.
when you walk around, like you're talking, it's like you're actually talking to someone yourself pretty much, but it's the same thing. But it's like you're asking yourself why, or like you're
Yeah,
walking
for
through the
sure.
process of
Hmm.
everything. And I think that has helped like speed up
Definitely.
the process a little bit for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So We do have some listener questions.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, I mean, I haven't put out a podcast in how long, still have listener
Yeah,
questions.
that's awesome.
Um, but before we get to those, I want to ask, okay, so two questions that I'm going to try and ask almost everyone now.
Hmm.
Do you think OnX or trail cameras had a bigger effect on the process or the more mature buck harvest, like with
Now,
technology
are you saying like overall or individually?
overall? So which one has more of an effect on like scouting and helping? Put it that way, assisting hunters in like trail cameras or OnX or a mapping service of
Yeah,
your choice.
I would definitely say trail cameras.
Okay, all right. So for scrapes, this is a big one.
Hmm.
Sense or no scent? When you see a scrape, when you go in there, are you putting sense in it if you find it, or are you not?
I personally don't know. Even if
Okay.
I'm making a mock scrape,
Yeah.
if I have to pee, I'll pee in it. But I just let it ride.
Yeah.
I've found the more and more, especially with the mock scrapes, the ones that I make, if I put them in the right location and I make them pretty big, and I've always found what I've started to notice is that when you can start to get those deer walking through that exposed soil more, they're taking care of the scent every time they do that, and they're going to interact with the licking branch, and I think that they're going to do everything they need to now. And I tell this with the landowners I work with. I don't, it's not that I'm against using scents. I think if you want to, more power to you, and they definitely can work. I think that if you put estrus into a scrape at the end of October, there's probably going to be more bucks that are going to visit at least around that scrape location. But I don't use it because I don't feel like it's necessary for my approach.
Yeah. I thought about literally this morning as I'm drinking coffee before starting our podcast. For everyone who's listening, this is the first morning podcast ever done. So it's if it's shaky, I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
just woke up at 5:40. So, but I thought about that while drinking coffee this morning. I was like, why do we use like if a scrape is good,
Yep.
you don't necessarily need scent because it's one of those like gimmicky tools, right? Like
Yeah, for
it's like
sure.
now sometimes it does work. I won't
Hmm.
lie. Like I've used it before and it brought in some good deer, but I think they're more curious about what the smell is than anything. It doesn't mean they're going to
Yeah.
keep coming back to that scrape. Now, if it's already a community scrape, they're going to come there all the time. If it's a well used scrape, big licking branch, they're going to come there no matter what, no matter what you
Yep.
put in there. It could scare them off though, too, if you put
Yep.
the wrong scent in there, and then it'll be gone from that area forever.
Hmm.
So like if that's what I like if I find a big scrape, big licking branch, all that kind of stuff, I'm not putting anything in it. If I make a
Yeah.
mock scrape, there are times when I will put stuff in it, but if it like you said, if it's in the right location, it changes things drastically. Like it doesn't
Definitely.
matter. They're more attracted to that big licking branch hanging down. Like
Yep. Couldn't agree
I,
more.
one thing I will never put in though is one of those ropes. I won't
Yeah.
I won't do the ropes because it's not natural for in the woods.
Yeah. Hmm.
It's unnatural stuff like that should not be in the woods. I don't think.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, and this when you start looking at all of the private land, and I mean, there's so many different ways, and you mentioned like the gimmick side of things, and it's the stuff does work, it can work, but
Mhm.
I also find that hunters are extremely gullible individuals and will definitely fall for anything that we feel is going to make our hunting experience better.
Mhm.
And I think that too many people look at things like the rope or the sense
Yeah.
as like I need this thing to fill my tag, rather than just using it as part of your strategy because I see guys that put out the ropes because they've seen the videos of the bucks online hitting these in daylight, so they're just, why wouldn't it work for me, But there's so much more that goes into it that when I work with somebody, I'm not trying to sell them on like, hey, you need to use this licking branch, this scent to put in it, or it's not going to work. I think that
Mhm.
where we put those scrape locations has such a bigger impact and is going to be such a better tool for you than anything you could put in it or any way you present that scrape location.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's like a crutch, right? It's like
Yep.
you look at this stuff. It's like, okay, if I put this out, a big buck's going to come in. That's
Yeah,
100% what I did when I was growing up too.
for
It was just like
sure. Yeah.
I'm gonna put nose jammer in the air and just
Yeah, for
know
sure.
something come in because
Yep.
I seen it on a real tree outdoors or whatever. Like it's
That's
it
right,
happens for
man.
them, so it
Yep.
works for me.
Yep.
Listener questions now. Some of these are pretty detailed, so you don't have to go into terrible
Yeah.
detail. Maybe we can save that for another episode if you want to go
Hmm.
more detail with it, or if you want to save it for your YouTube channel, like just
Yeah,
go off that
for
then.
sure. Yeah.
Um, what it takes to go. This is from Bo Hunt the Public.
Okay.
Met him at Huntstock actually when I was up there.
Hmm.
What it takes to go from finding and killing any deer to keying in on big bucks consistently.
Man, I would say for that, the biggest thing is time. Investing time into the process and not just showing up to hunt. I think that as you grow as a woodsman, you're going to understand deer movement, but then when you start to try to target the older age class bucks, they beat to a different drum. And there's not as many of them out there. So, you can just go out and target a deer out of the deer herd and you can be successful a lot easier than when you're trying to target one specific animal, or even if there's only a handful of them in the area you hunt, your odds are automatically lower. And then just understanding that they're going to do things a little bit different, it's just going to take you more time and you're going to need to understand things at a deeper level. And that's where it's really going to come into like asking these questions like why is this happening, or how would he do that, or what does this look like here? All of those things come into play, and the only way around getting consistent with it is by spending more time out there. The guys that I rub elbows with here in Ohio that are just certified big buck killers on public land especially, they spend a lot of time out there and they understand that piece of woods they hunt at a very deep level.
Yes. Yeah, understanding the woods, being one with the woods is probably gonna kill you a lot of big buck, put it that
Yeah,
way.
for sure. Yeah.
um, I believe you also went to a traditional bow as well. You tried to, right?
Nope, not me. Nope.
Okay. So someone asked, going from compound to traditional. You never went to trad. I don't know.
No,
Okay.
no, I have not.
Okay. Maybe you knew something I didn't know, and I was like,
Yeah, no, not I. I'm still with the compound. I'm not definitely don't have any intention of going traditional either. I'm just happy with my Matthews. I love the way that thing
yeah,
shoots.
yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense because I with a kid now, you don't want to go and risk it.
Right, yeah. No, I
Money.
don't need to pick up new
Yeah,
hobbies right now. I'm
no.
good with what I got.
This one from the Unnotched podcast. What's a realistic parcel size for guy with a mortgage and other expenses to afford, and for the parcel to be worth the investment?
Yeah, I mean, man, I tell
Loaded
you,
question.
definitely hard to say without knowing like the full financial picture of what exactly you'll be able to take on. I think that understanding that there's going in order to improve a property, you're going to have additional costs outside of purchasing, and then whatever your loan commitment is, if you want to make that property actually hunt better, there's going to be some additional expenses to that. So that budgeting aspect is really just going to come into understanding that whatever your payment is, making sure that that's not going to hurt your financial situation, but then also understanding that you can turn that property into whatever you want to, but everything you do is going to be another investment in time and money. So understanding that dynamic, but as far as the acreage size goes, I don't think you need anything significant to have a good hunting property if you can buy the right piece. I've been on properties that are 15, 20 acres in size, and you really can set up one good area, and you're probably going to be able to fill your tag out of a single tree every single year just because everything sets up so good on that piece. Now, I don't think that every 20-acre property is going to be like that, but if you have this incredible travel funnel or you sit right on the edge of a really big bedding area and you're the main transition to the food source, you're going to have deer on your property. And if you stack a couple things in your favor, you're going to have those consistent opportunities. So if your financial situation puts you in a spot where affordability wise, you're only looking at maybe being able to purchase 20 acres, don't feel like you're out of the game. You just have to be much more diligent on the process of finding the right piece of land. Find
Yeah.
that piece that everything really comes together, and you're going to have to zoom out on those smaller pieces and understand the dynamics of the surrounding area as a whole to figure out whether that smaller acreage property is a place that you're going to spend time consistently.
Let me ask you this. Home equity line of credit
Hmm.
to buy property. Is that smart or not smart?
Well, I'm definitely not a financial advisor, so I'll start with that. But I
Okay.
think it goes down to what amount of risk are you willing to take on to invest into a project, and then just the whole dynamic back into what are you comfortable with a monthly payment, and then like what are you looking at that property for? I've worked with individuals and I've done it myself where I've tapped into equity like that to make a purchase on a property, knowing that I was going to be okay on that monthly payment or the people that I'm working with the end goal of improving and selling that piece of land. That's a very formidable strategy that can be repeated if you do it the right way and you're very diligent about your entire process. I don't think that going on to land.com and finding a listing and being like, that's a cool piece of land, and then pulling out a HELOC the next day and going to put a down payment is a good idea. Like, I think that research needs to be done anytime you're investing. And I've been burned on investments before because that's just the nature of investing. Like, there's risk involved into it. So I think it's how comfortable are you with risk? And if you are going to take out that equity out of something, is it going to hurt your situation financially, mentally, whatever it may be, and be very diligent in that process.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense because I was thinking about that. Like the goal of mine is like buy a piece of land with a cabin, possibly some point.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, home equity line of credit, like that could be good, especially if I wanted to keep it in the family for years and years to come.
Yeah,
But probably down the road, think about that, especially now with two kids, like wait a little bit, wait till they're
for
both at
sure.
school. We don't have to pay for daycare anymore. Daycare
Yeah.
is so expensive. Gosh.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
so Bryson Rierick, uh, sorry if I completely butchered that name. Um, best property improvement tactics for February and March.
Ah, man, right now is a really, for me anyway, and this can vary depending on where you're at. But with the weather starting to warm up a little bit down here in Ohio, we're going to start cranking out some pretty heavy timber cutting at this point. Whether that it just comes down to just like general timber stand improvement, if we're targeting improving bedding areas, I really love to do that this time of the year for a couple of reasons. It's the most intrusive work. It's going to take the longest time to actually see the results from it. But also, right now, the deer need those calories more than ever. And by getting those treetops down to the ground, you're doing the deer herd a favor by giving them that really good food because all of that nutrient energy is just bundled up in the buds of those trees. So it's just like you're giving the deer a buffet when you go out there and drop those trees down. So personally, right now for me, my heavy timber work, that's when the bulk of it is getting done is February and March.
That's that's what I saw. I scouted a piece very close to me, and I was like, "There's no deer sign here." I got to one spot with a bunch of fallen trees. The
Yeah,
sign around those
everywhere.
trees, dude, like it was like it
Yeah.
was there was beds, there was piss, there was shit, there was
Yep.
everything around it. I was like, they're eating like this tree looks dead, but yet they're
Yeah.
eating all of that all around. I was like,
Yep.
this is where I'm gonna find a shed at some
Yeah,
point.
for sure. Definitely. Yep. Couldn't agree more. And if there's one thing, if you're not looking to take on any big timber projects or it's just not something that needs to be done, I think that right now, with the woods completely bare, if you need to try to visualize the changes that need to be made on your property, now is such a great time to do it. Of where are your weak points? Where are the places that you can funnel movement even more? And how can I tweak things and move things around? I think like just an overall assessment at this time of the year is something that's very, very productive to do as well.
Yeah, 100%. Like if I had property, that's what I want to do is make bedding areas, give them food off trees, all that kind of stuff. Like get
Yeah.
the food down their level for sure.
Yep. Yep. And I mean, like myself, I'm in a really good spot because I live on the property that I'm trying to improve for whitetail hunting. So I can just slip out the back door, walk around the woods for an hour and kind of think on an area that I want to improve, how I want to improve it. And I can get down to that granular level. But that's all I'm doing right now is I'm going to go out there, kind of visualize this area definitely needs to be thickened up and then just kind of plan it out so that way once it's time to actually fire up the chainsaw, I know exactly what I'm doing.
Yep. From TP Rich 30. How do we balance management slash regs, QDMA, and getting back to our roots? That's a very loaded question. Um, the roots part, I think you just have to hunt for you. I think that's the
Yeah,
biggest part. But
definitely.
management and regs and QDMA, how do you deal with that with going different states? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, that's like you said, that is kind of a loaded question. I agree with what you said on the roots, getting back to your roots. I think that ultimately, like the direction the hunting industry has gone has in some ways been negative. I mean, like you see these bad stories about people using drones to get deer and just doing these
Yeah.
unethical things just for that grip and grin photo online, right? And I think ultimately that side of the hunting industry, like that's the negative part for us. And
Mhm.
my entire stance on all of that is like if we really just want to focus on the good and why we're all out there, you need to be able to remove ego from the equation and understand that your hunting journey is not ever going to be the same as anybody and most of the time strangers that you're never going to meet online and you don't need any validation from them in order to feel successful out in the woods. Never ever has my journey been a part of that and I don't want it any other way. So I think that if you want to look at it just like how can we feel more connected to the hunt, don't ever one time consider what somebody else's opinion is. As long as you're doing it legally, ethically, then hunt your hunt. It's really as simple as that. As far as the management, the QDMA, everything like that, I think that's more on a collective. I think that it requires a group of individuals with a common outcome because we're at the point now that there's too many special interest groups involved in how these types of things are set up with the crossbow companies. You know, it's feeding here in Ohio, things like that. Like there's all of these things that can be perceived as negative, and what it really does at its core is it divides. And I think ultimately, like on a bigger scale, anytime you look at any kind of problem that's going on, there's this hard line of division out there,
Mhm.
and we're forcing people to take sides. So it's like come together as a collective, understand like the whole goal here, whether you're out there to just harvest deer or if you're out there to harvest the biggest buck on the block, like we're all out here trying to uh, enjoy that resource just in a different way. So we need to work together to get to a better solution, a better outcome.
Yes, I completely agree with that. Like you said, there's a fine line. There's a fine line right there. Like we're supposed to take one side or the other, but sometimes it's like, wait, what are we doing? Like it just has to
Yeah,
make sense. And
for
that's
sure.
kind of like the whole answer to that, all those questions is like if we get back to like just hunting for ourselves,
Hmm.
then we don't have to take that hard stance one way or
For
another. Like
sure. Yeah.
and then it'll just be like, okay, wait, we're just hunting because it makes sense. Like we're
Yeah.
making sense of the whole situation. Like for PA, for example, and I know we're about an hour and 15 minutes in, so we're gonna wrap this up here pretty soon. But like um Pennsylvania right now, they're trying to make rifle season go to the before Thanksgiving. Like
Hmm.
start before Thanksgiving. And that's gonna like people are all up in arms about that. People want it back to Mondays. People want to stay Saturday after Thanksgiving. Like once again, there's a fine line and you're taking one side or the other. It's like which makes the most sense. I think we just have to take a step back and be like, which makes more sense to do.
Hmm.
It's like this whole big war between like
Yeah.
two different sides, like who wants the Monday opener, who wants the Saturday opener, and then there's this one that like wants something new. That's
Yeah.
gonna like it's like we're just fighting each other for something that we all love to do. Why are we doing
Yep.
that? I just don't. I
Exactly.
never understand that. Is like
Yeah.
why are we fighting each other? It's like
Yeah.
the whole crossbows compound debate, or even crossbows compound and trad bows. It's like just hunt what is what is legal, and
Yep.
just worry about yourself. Like you don't have to worry about what someone else is using. Like it's just it's the
Yeah.
industry. Just
I
I
agree,
feel it's
man.
separating us so much.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I think about this kind of thing a lot, and I
Mhm.
really do think that it's just that ego has such a stronghold in the hunting industry that if we can just remove ego from the equation and just not not care about what other people are doing, like you said, as long as it's legal and ethical, like just let them be. It does not matter to me if you just shot a 170 with the crossbow, even if
Yep.
you're my next door neighbor. Like good job, man. Congratulations. That is freaking awesome that you did that. And I'm still going to go out there the next day, watch the sun come up out of the tree. And I'm going to be super happy because I'm in a tree and I'm watching the sunrise over these big hills and it's beautiful. And I have no idea what I'm going to see today. And I would rather think about it like that than because like I don't want to go sit in a tree and think about how angry I am because my neighbor just shot my target buck with a crossbow and think about all of the bad things of like, crossbows shouldn't be allowed. He's using a corn pile. He's doing all these things. Like, that's just taking the joy out of it for me. And then it's creating that division. And it's just not where I want to invest my energy when I'm out in the woods. I think that what you give out there is what you're going to receive. And if you're given that negative energy, you're just going to get negative things in return.
Yep. Yep. There's always an opposite and equal reaction, I think is what
Yep.
it's called.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, something like that. But yeah, man, I really appreciate you coming on here with the
For
conversations.
sure,
Always love
man.
having conversations with you. We'll do it again for the series. Can't let anyone know what that series is. Only people who are coming on the podcast know what that series is going to be about. Um, but yeah, I really appreciate you.
For sure, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It was good morning podcast. Good morning podcast. Way
For
to start the
sure.
day. Uh,